Show Jesus, and this week we're continuing our First John series. We're talking about First John chapter 3 this week. So we have 3 points for you guys, and our 3 points are verses this time, like we've been doing in the entire series. And the first one is First John chapter 3, verse 1.
Okay, and that says, "See how very much our Father loves us. He calls us his children, and that is what we are. But the people who belong to this world do not recognize that we are God's children because they do not know him." And what this verse is saying is that it's just reminding us that if you're a Christian, you are God's child, and God, well, even if you're not, you're God's child. But God is just recognizing us as his children and saying, I'm your dad, and you can come to me with anything. And if you, like we said last week, if you love this world, then you don't really know him. And so what they're saying is who do love this world don't recognize us as children of God, but he recognizes us as that. So...
And it's actually such a truly amazing thing that we are called children of God. And I think that is one of probably the most overlooked concepts in today's society, because it's an amazing thing. Lana was just saying that it's an amazing because we get to go to heaven because we have the darkest sin inside of our hearts, and God can't look upon sin. And even though he can't look upon sin, he calls us his children, and he lets us enter his kingdom. And it's just such an amazing concept, and I can't even wrap my mind around it, but we just forget it so often. We have to remember that. And our second point for you guys is 1 John chapter 3, verse 3. Let me read that.
Yep.
Awesome. "And all who have this eager exception will keep themselves pure just as he is pure." And this verse is kind of just saying, we've talked about it before, that being Christians isn't the norm today, and it never really has been. And so, we're salt and light. And the rest of the world's kind of like sugar. They want to sugarcoat everything, and that's just, they want it to be pretty. And it's kind of like how you don't speak out sometimes, like, oh, that's awkward. You don't talk about it. And so we're the salt and light. We're like the, ooh, you notice it, when something's really salty. And it's like an exception. It's not the norm. And so he's saying that whoever wants this, whoever has the eager exception, it's not saying whoever's parents make them do it. No, it's if you want to do it, and it's if you decide to make that decision, then you are going to strive to keep your life pure in all aspects. You're going to strive to be righteous, just as Jesus walked without sin. And God knows that we're going to sin. He knows it before he ever made the universe. But it's just saying that we will try with all of our being to walk without sin.
Yeah. I think I say it all the time, but if you're doing it because someone says you're doing it, God knows that. God knows where our hearts are, and he knows when we're really, really trying, and when it's really in our heart to really try and do something, and not for others, but for him. And that's, I think, one of the main things that we forget sometimes is that not being normal, being a Christian, isn't so that our church recognizes us, or our family, or our friends. It's so that God recognizes us, and he sees that, and he sees that love that we have for him, and that we're willing to speak out and do whatever it takes to show who he is through us. So
I think that we kind of assume, public schoolers, we kind of assume, or just that, it is being salt and light if we're being Christians. But you may very well be surrounded by all Christians, and you may very well feel like you have to act that way because that is what the norm is. And so just like Lana said, it is truly about where your heart is. It's not about what you're doing to impress anyone. It may be that the boy that you like or the girl that you like is a Christian, so you're like, oh, maybe I'm going to try that out, and get the girl. And that's not okay, because God knows where your heart is, and you can't, ultimately he's the only one that can change that. So, if you don't know if your heart's in it, praying about that might be a problem. Okay, so our last point for you guys is 1 John chapter 3, verse 9.
And it says, those who have been born into God's family do not make a practice of sinning, because God's life is in them. So they can't keep on sinning because they are children of God. And this is just saying that, because we are children of God, it's like I said before, we are called to do our best and to not sin. And like Kaylin said, he knows we're going to sin, and he knows we're not perfect, but we can try. It doesn't hurt to try to not lie. It's not that hard to not lie to someone. And we don't have to, embellish stories or murder people. That's really easy to not do. But, it's so simple, but at the same time, it's so hard. So I think God's just asking, try your hardest not to sin. And when you mess up, repent, ask him to forgive you, and ask him to help you and not do it again. So
The way that I saw it when I read that verse is I thought about culture. I thought about how we identify with our families because even if we weren't born into that family, we identify with them through our traditions, through our cultures, and through um, just our customs and things like that. And so a lot of times we take our name as, like, we take pride in our name most of the time, and especially in, like, tribes and, like, older things like that. And so we get the pride, like we get the like armor of wearing God's name. Like we are the children of him, so we therefore wear his name, and every single day we're walking out and we're repping him. And so even if we don't understand something in the Bible, or what we don't understand why God has commanded us to do something, the Bible even says that we aren't going to understand everything in it, but we are repping his name, and therefore God has a reason why we're doing what we're doing. So we just have to follow him, follow the Bible, and then do what he tells us to do, because that's our culture. That's what's in us is Jesus. So it just all boils down to that. It's really important. I mean, we've talked about this before too. Like I said, Salt and Light. People are watching you every single day, and like you're telling them what Christianity is, and you could be the only Bible that someone ever sees. So.